Hi, welcome back. I'm so glad to have Laura Kendrick here today from Kendrick Family Law Solutions. And we work so often in the workshops together, Laura, and we're talking to so many people that kind of fit into our process, which is the amicable couple who want to do the divorce themselves. They want to sit down and figure it out. And that's great, but you know as well as I do that that's not every single couple. So many times we do find that there are couples who can't sit down at the table together. They need to hire an attorney, and that is where you come in. And I'd love for you to share with my clients and with people out there, how should they go about finding an attorney? And then I'll maybe follow up with some other questions. But if you want to start with just what is the best thing, how to look for a good attorney?
Yeah. Well, so there's three things that I really talk about when I talk to folks about choosing an attorney. I think the most important part about choosing an attorney is making sure that you have an attorney that's specializing in divorce, whether, it's a complicated matter, whether you've got a small business involved, kind of, you can even get a little bit more specialized than just divorce, someone that does divorce that's specializing in small business, or maybe a particular asset that you have. But it's really important that you get someone that's doing divorce and that's pretty much all they do, so that they focus on that they specialize on that, their office does, their staff does, their paralegals do. So that's really important. And then you can hone on in a little bit more, if you have specific assets that you really think you want someone to specialize in. So I think that's a really important aspect of choosing an attorney. A lot of attorneys will do, some criminal, some civil, a little bit of domestic. That may not be helpful for you. You might just want someone who really focuses. And so I think that that's best when you're working with the niche area of divorce. The other thing I tell folks is to really trust your gut with an attorney. If they don't sound like they know what they're talking about, if they don't seem like they're paying attention to you, if they don't seem like they care about you, those are probably really good feelings that you're getting for a reason. You really need your lawyer to be confident and to know their stuff and to care about you and to care about your family and to want to help you. And so they seem like really basic issues that you'd think that, a lawyer would possess, but not everybody feels that way. So, if you get the vibe that you're not the most important thing in the room, then, trust your gut in that aspect. Just like every other profession, your lawyer needs to care about the conclusion of your case. So trust your gut. If they don't seem like they care, they probably don't. And then the other big thing that I tell folks is, and this is kind of in line with trusting your gut too, but make sure you don't get caught up in this over promising and under delivering type of thing. If you're meeting with a lawyer and they tell you that they're going to get you everything you want and it's not going to cost you very much money at all and everything's going to be just great, that's not going to happen. You're going to have to make concessions. You're going through a divorce. It's going to cost you money and attorney's fees if you go that route. You're going to have to make concessions and compromises down the line. It's not going to be fun and you're not going to get everything you want. So if a lawyer expresses those sentiments to you, assume that that's an overpromise and that they'll ultimately underdeliver. That's not really what's best for your future. You probably want someone to tell you ultimately where you're going to be with the facts of your case in some realm of reality. You don't want something that isn't going to happen. You don't want anybody to sugarcoat it. So, just trust your gut in that respect as well, and make sure that, you really think about what someone's saying to you as far as, what you're walking away with in the conclusion of your case.
That's so good. Those are such good tips. And so it seems like when I meet a couple and they might want to do our process and I realize that it's not going to be a good fit, I find that so often the reason why is because there's a big power imbalance in between the parties. And
Sure.
and a lot of times, let's say it's the woman, not always though, but she might just feel really intimidated, and maybe she hasn't been in control of the money or in control of the finances, and she just feels like less than, I should say, or just like she doesn't deserve, an equitable, what we would call an equitable settlement,
Sure.
or a half that she's entitled to. How would you help those women? Because I feel like that's a very common situation that I find they want to do mediation, but they're not really able to advocate for themselves. So I'm like, you really need to have someone speak for you, someone like you. Tell us
Yeah.
how you work with a client like that.
Yeah, I mean, a client like that is going to be going through like a huge transition. A lot of times, you haven't handled the finances. So, trying to get a handle on really what you're even dividing and then how you're going to like move forward. What bills are you going to pay? What accounts are you going to get? Who are you supposed to talk to about this stuff? And if you don't know those types of things, obviously it's really tough to advocate for yourself. And then, of course, you can hire a lawyer, but then you're going to want to feel comfortable talking to that person and making sure that they're hearing your goals, because probably for quite some time the other person hasn't been listening. So you need to make sure that you're kind of walking that line between getting the education that you need and then making sure that you find someone who you can talk to about your goals, and who you can really just lay on the line, like, here are the things that I know, here are the things that I don't know. I need help in these various different areas, and here are my goals. And that's what you really want, is you want a lawyer you can talk to who can hear those goals and who can then translate them on paper. And so you also want someone who can help point you in the right direction as far as getting the education that you need to sort of empower yourself to be able to make the final decisions. Because you can have someone advocate for you, and you can have that person tell you what is a good deal and what is a bad deal. But if you don't fundamentally understand those things yourself, then you're still going to be really concerned. You're going to have trouble sleeping at night. And then when it comes down to reaching an agreement, you may or may not feel comfortable really signing that. So
Yeah.
I think that, for someone who has sort of maybe not been a major part of the finances for a really long time, educating yourself on what these IRAs mean and what you can do with that and what kind of money you're going to get, and really just from a basic fundamental standpoint, so that person, when they're in those moments, when you're in mediation and you're making large decisions in short periods of time, they feel really comfortable, and that they know that they're educated and they know exactly what they're doing in that moment. And then they've also got somebody advocating for them. So that is really, the two things that you want to have, is this fundamental knowledge to feel comfortable executing those decisions, and then an attorney who can help you advocate for really the best avenue to make those decisions and what kind of strategies you want to use.
Exactly, and that's really what we do. So when I find a client who doesn't feel very educated about the financials, they're very comfortable in that arena, that's what we do. We come alongside them, we help them figure it out, we educate them to understand the assets, but a lot of times they're not able to really advocate for themselves. And that's why, yes, I totally agree that the education is important for them to feel like they've got their feet on the ground when it comes to the finances. But so often they don't feel like they're worthy of half. He's been making the money, or sometimes it's a man, it's whoever the bigger bread earner is, that wage earner, the higher wage earner has a lot of the power, and they almost make the person who hasn't been making the money feel like they don't deserve it, or they shouldn't have half of it, or they shouldn't get maintenance, and it becomes a real emotional pull. And that's why I say you really need to talk to an attorney. An attorney can fight for you where you might not feel strong in your conviction that, yes, of course you deserve XYZ. People think, well, I didn't contribute, I didn't make the money, he's the one or she's the one who's really made all the money, it's really not my money. And they felt like that for years. How would you help someone like that? Because I see that often.
Yeah, I think it obviously is a specific mentality to have. The law doesn't really feel that way. The law feels that these contributions that you make as a homemaker, or raising your children, or whatever it is that you've done, are worthwhile. And so, I think a lot of people that are primary breadwinners are in a position where they would not be able to have attended to that kind of responsibility as adamantly as they did if they didn't have someone contributing in the background that's keeping the home up, that's making the dinners, that's washing your clothes, like that's looking out for the kids, that's taking them to soccer practice, that's making their lunches in the morning. Like, that job never ends. And so it's just as worthwhile as the person that's made the money. And when you go to split those things, yeah, you can't split the time that you spent doing that. Yeah, you're just splitting money, and it might not feel like you really earned that, but you did. And the law says that you did. And so they're trying to help compensate you, for your time and your effort. It's you can't get that back, so you're getting it in a different form. So it's absolutely something that someone deserves. Just because you don't make money or didn't actually tangibly contribute to that doesn't mean you didn't make a big difference in the totality of the circumstances in creating that wealth. And making it so the other person doesn't have to worry about those things, which is really important if you're a team. And so you got to think about it like that. You guys are a team, and this is what you created. And so you don't have to walk away with nothing. You don't have to think about it like that. You really are entitled to have.
I love that. I want so many people to hear that, because I think they come in so beaten down, the person that might not have been the one making the money, and it's hard for them to realize that they can and should share in that as well, equally.
Absolutely.
Another thing that comes up, and I was going to ask you about, is when a lot of people live together, they think, oh, we're not going to get married, so we can avoid this whole divorce thing. But that's not always what happens, right? I mean, if you you got the same bank accounts, you buy a house together, you've got some cars together, and maybe you're keeping things titled separately, but you're living together for 10 years. How does the law view that? I'm always curious about that.
Yeah, so that's the old tried and true common law marriage question. Really, all of those things are going to be relevant, whether you guys have joint bank accounts, whether you've got, some joint debt together, what are you doing with your tax returns? But if you think that you're just going to avoid the piece of paper of marriage and then not have to go through a divorce, you could be mistaken. Ultimately, it really depends on what your intent was. If nobody in your life thinks you're married, and your neighbors don't think you're married, and you've never told anyone you're married, you just happen to have things like a joint bank account, maybe you've never filed a joint tax return, in those situations, you're probably not common law married. But, if you decide to just go ahead and combine everything and file some joint tax returns and hold yourselves out as a couple that may be married, but you just haven't had a ceremony, then in that situation, you may very well be common law married. And at that point, you're going to be subject to all the laws that are dealing with folks that are going through a divorce, for those folks that did it the traditional ceremony, filing the marriage certificate way. You're subject to all that kind of stuff. So it may not be a complete and I guess rock solid way to avoid those types of responsibilities, but it ultimately really depends on what your intent is as a couple, and how other people view that. And a lot of that time, it morphs over those years that you're together. And then let me tell you, it morphs even more when you go to separate, and one of you says that, you've been married and you've done all these things together, and then the other one says something different. So, it can get to be a messy situation. So it's one of those complexities where you try not to make any assumptions, and you really just try to dive into the details of what's been going on, so that, whatever the situation is and whatever the facts are, you reach some sort of equitable conclusion.
Yeah, that does get a little complicated, a little the gray area for sure.
Absolutely.
They would definitely want to talk to someone like you. So if someone did want to get a hold of you, tell us a little bit about your process, how to get a hold of you, and how you work with clients, how that goes.
Sure. So it's just me here at the law firm. I'm the only lawyer. So if you call me, you can probably generally get me. You can always just Google my name, Laura Kendrick, or Kendrick Family Legal Solutions. I've been doing this for a little under a decade, and I do nothing but family law. So anything that's related to divorces, child custody, child support, anything you can think of as far as divorce is concerned, I handle those issues. I'm always happy to give free consultations. So, if you're in the middle of a mediation and you're just concerned about a couple of things and you really just need someone to talk to get the lay of the land, I do that for free over the phone for up to an hour. So I'm always happy to talk with folks. And then I give, free follow-up questions after that as well, because sometimes you go back and then you end up having more questions once you mull it around or sleep on it. So anyone can call me, reach out to me on the website, Facebook message with the firm that way. You can always Google it, but I do give free consultations. And so I'm always happy to help anyone who is just kind of wondering, if I did this a different way, what would it look like? What is the law going to think is fair? Where are my floors? Where are my ceilings? Those are things that I can absolutely help, clients work through if they're just, at an impasse where they're not sure what to do. And then of course, I'm always happy to help if things aren't able to be worked out in mediation and you need an attorney to go through the traditional process of a divorce. I'm obviously always available for that kind of legal advice.
Yeah, I mean, you are such a straight shooter. That's why I really like you. You don't sugarcoat it. You tell people how you see the best case, worst case. You're probably going to be somewhere in the middle. You know your stuff, and that's why I really like using you as a resource for our clients.
So I appreciate that, Leslie, and I think what you guys do is a fabulous thing as well. Keeping folks out of court and keeping families happy is a really essential way to go about this. And sometimes it doesn't always work, but I think it's a really great way to put families in a position to move forward with their goals intact and maybe with a little bit more amicability, and that's really important for families. So.
Well, thank you, and thank you for joining us. And
Of course, thanks for having me.
well, sure. See you at the next workshop.
All right, thanks, Leslie.
All right, take care.